And this is the first of our Fashion Conversations, which is a new part of the Fashion Culture series. And I'm really pleased that tonight, for the first one, we're going to be having with us Roxanne Lowit, who I'm sure you all know is Vogue fashion photographer, has worked for American Vogue, Italian Vogue, Spanish Vogue. She's worked for a number of other magazines, Vanity Fair, French Elle, Glamour, etc. And her photographs are in the permanent collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Whitney Museum, and soon I hope the museum at FIT. She has done a number of really fantastic books, particularly Moments and People, and she'll be talking to us also about how she has a new book coming out, which is about Christian Dior, but I'm not going to anticipate that. So will you please welcome Roxanne Lowit. So, Roxanne, probably you are most famous for having really invented the whole genre of backstage fashion photography. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you came to do that.
Oh, here we are.
How did it happen that you first went backstage when nobody took pictures back there?
Well, to back up a little further than that, I actually went to Fashion Institute of Technology and graduated here. Can't hear me? Okay, let's see if we can do it. Can you hear me now? Yes? Turn it down.
It's tilt it more towards you.
Okay. Does that work?
Yeah.
Everybody hears me. Okay. I actually went to FIT. I'm a graduate from FIT, and when I went to FIT, there was one building, no dorms, but really great teachers. And at the time, they had no photography. And so I went for textile design. And for many years, I was a textile designer. And then I was given a camera, and I went backstage to take pictures. And the reason I went backstage was there was no credentials for me. And at the time, I didn't look like a photographer because they were all these big guys wearing safari jackets with huge lenses. And they came with a little sweet editor who sat there, and this was in the front of the stage, and the runway was actually a showroom, because they didn't have big fashion shows at the time. And so I didn't look like them at all, and I took my camera and I went to the backstage, because I wanted to take pictures there. And then Annie Flanders from the Soho News somehow found out I was taking pictures and going to Paris. And she said, if you get a real camera and take pictures, I'll use them in the Soho News. And so I did, and she did. And in going over to Paris, I read how to load film in the camera. Then I ended up in Paris, happily and luckily, through some sort of magic, with Pat Cleveland, who's sitting here on the screen. And it was with Andy Warhol and Yves Saint Laurent at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And I thought, this is fun. I could do this. And so I decided to go back and quit my job and be a photographer. And everybody said, you're crazy to do this because you have a family and you just can't quit your job and do something. I mean, you don't even know how to be a photographer. But I knew I found my métier. And so now we can go and see some pictures. This is some of the very early work, like Pat Cleveland, and again, Pat Cleveland, Jerry Hall there at Studio 54. This is very early Naomi Campbell. And this is backstage in Europe, with Emmanuel Ungaro, and I asked the ladies to stand there. And one of the nice things about being backstage is you have a rapport with the people. So you could say, could you please stand there? Could you turn? Could you smile? Could you fix her dress? And so it makes it really special. And for years and years, nobody went backstage, so it was just me, which was really great fun. And this is Terry Mugler and Galliano, Vivienne Westwood. Again, Vivienne Westwood with Kate Moss eating her ice cream. It's difficult to take a bad picture of Kate Moss. There's Kate again backstage, and this was an inspiration for a Banksy Marilyn Monroe series that he did. And this is the First Lady of France, Carla Bruni, before she was the First Lady. And coincidentally, I had done the advertisements for Dior when Gianfranco Ferré was designing Dior, and Carla Bruni was the model at the time. Maria Carla. And this is the beautiful Linda Evangelista. And backstage, it's so great because you're really close up and you can touch the garments and again ask them to do things and so on. And Maria Carla wearing a hat by Philip Tracy. And Giselle was great fun. Carolina Korkova, who never would smile for pictures when she first started because she thought her smile was too big. And I always say smile because I really like people to be happy, and I like the energy of people enjoying themselves. And so she started to smile and became very big. And afterwards she said, "I'm really happy you told me to smile." This was a Victor and Ralph show, and the girls didn't know how to dance. They were supposed to dance, and it was quite funny. Victoria's Secrets. Tom Ford spraying Kate Moss before she goes out. Orlando Pita, really good hairdresser, watching. And this was Galliano, and they had this pigment. And before the girls went out, they put them in a room with pigment. And they covered their eyes and their faces. And then they just dumped this pigment on them and they went out. It was absolute madness. But then John is a genius and he's absolutely mad at the same time. This also was from that same show of painting people. The last Valentino show, and I saw all the girls go out. And they all left at once, so I knew they'd be doing something really great in the front of the stage. So I ran out front to get them all leaving the stage. So it's kind of like the finale for Valentino. And thank you. It is Natalia. And she's at Ungaro Couture at the time.
There seems to be something, really kind of serendipitous and magical about this, that someone gave you a little camera, and then you got the chance to go backstage, and you knew some of the models, and you knew about fashion, so you were your own fashion editor and photographer all together.
Right.
But you've told me once that you have this sort of an idea that ancients or so-called primitive people have about what cameras do to you. You want to talk to people about that?
Yes, I believe like the ancients do, that when you take a really great picture, that you have a part of the soul of the person. And that's why they were afraid to have people draw them or take their pictures. But I believe when you really do it right, that you capture the soul of the person, and that lives forever.
I think there's something about your the way you interact with people backstage that makes these really unique photographs, because you seem very unthreatening to them. I mean, I know when you took the pictures of me, I normally freeze up like a deer in the headlights, and I'm totally paranoid. And you just make everybody seem very relaxed and as though they just know that you're going to be doing a good picture of them. So even though you capture their soul, you do it in a way which seems non-threatening.
Right. Well, that's very important so that they feel at ease, so you can catch with the soul. I think it's also very important to always be nice and to have that shine through, because if you are like that, it reflects back at you. And so no matter who I'm doing pictures of, I also want to love what I'm doing at that time. I want to really enjoy it, and I want them to enjoy it. So if that's the case, it always shows in the pictures as well. So when you're having fun, it always looks like you're having fun. And that's very important, to have that great energy in pictures for me.
Now, in addition to doing the things backstage, you'd be taking pictures at fashion shows all day, and then in the night you'd go out and take more pictures. You want to talk about the other half of the other half of your photographic life?
I'm obsessed, obviously. And my favorite thing to do is take pictures. And so when I'm finished taking pictures during the day at fashion shows or whatever, portraits and so on, I go out at night and I take pictures. And I take pictures at clubs, and started with Studio 54, Xenon, and that time. And to this day, if I hear of a great party or a club happening, I love going. And I try to go out as much as I can because, one, it gives me back energy, and two, it makes me feel ahead of the curve. I feel younger, I feel more in touch because I could see what's going on out there. And I just love being behind the camera. So for me, it just gives me so much joy that I can go on day and night and do.
Let's see
and
some
that's
more.
one reason I wear black as well, because I can dress like this in the morning and then go from uptown to downtown and underground and so on. So it really works. This
That's
is
Galliano.
Galliano. Yes, exactly.
Talk to us a little bit about John, because I know that John Galliano is sort of, in a way, your favorite designer, and you've been covering him for years. Talk to us about John.
Well, the first show that I could remember seeing from John was backstage in Paris, and there were these huge gowns there, and John was saying to Kate, "Kate, it's like Gone with the Wind. You're running. There's no tomorrow, you're running, but be careful, the gown is really heavy and it has a loop in it and a hook in it, and you've got to be really careful, but you're running." And he kept giving her this energy and this fantasy, and he went to every girl, and every girl for him was, "You're beautiful, you're wonderful," and run and turn and stop and so on. And for me, it was so exciting to see him do this, because I would be backstage at all the shows, but he was the first one to give it that kind of insane energy that he has. And so that it was love at first sight.
Shall we keep going?
Mm-hmm. That's Dior. This one is Olivier Theskens. And this is Steven Tyler backstage at Betsy Johnson. And again, he was blowing bubbles, and I said, "Blow a bubble," and it didn't blow, and so he pulled the gum out. And I thought, oh, great picture. I'll take that one instead. And this is Elizabeth Salzman and Marc Jacobs when Marc was a baby. And he dressed in a tuxedo, but without the pants. It was a really great look for him. And I love this other guy on the side just looking like, what is he doing?
Now, you don't like the idea of paparazzi or the term paparazzi, but you take also these candid images of people.
Well, paparazzis are usually aggressive and hiding, and they don't care. And I'm invited, and I do care. And I never take a picture of anybody who doesn't want their picture taken. So I approach them, and if it's all fair, then I take pictures. And if they don't want it, and they say not now or whatever, then that was it. I go to someone else. I take another picture. So this was at a voguing contest, and Mark should have won for costume. And this is John Battista Valli, and he was at the Principe de Savoia, and he was just lying there, kind of reminding me very much of the picture that was taken of Chanel. And so I took the picture, and he has pearls on, which you can't see very well, but he's actually wearing pearls under all that. And I just thought it was a really nice picture of him. This is Calvin when he was a bit younger. Calvin went to school with us, with me at the same time. And he became really famous really quick. He did coats. Narciso Rodriguez and Linda Evangelista with Albert Ilya. Giorgio Armani, and he's quite amazing. He's really buff. He's close to 80 now, and he's got all these muscles and things. And I like the star in his sunglasses. Donatella and Mickey Rourke. Stella McCartney. Backstage, Shalom. And this is John Galliano, and I think if he ever saw Mark's picture, maybe he was inspired by him, but maybe he didn't see Mark's picture anyway. He did show up like this fairly recently, and I just adore the picture of him sitting by his little makeup mirror with a cigarette. And I think because he's such a showman, I have a real feeling for him and what he does, because when he does his shows, the girls are perfect from head to toe. They're all in whatever clothes or costume. Their nails are done, their hair is done, the toes are done, the shoes are done, the background is done. I mean, just everything there is so complete. It's really incredible. And this is one of my pictures that's going to be in the new Dior book that I'm doing, Backstage Dior, the Galliano years. And I haven't got the full title yet, but it's pretty close to that.
I think, look at the makeup there. I mean, this is part of that whole theatrical extravaganza you were talking about. That there's the amazing Pat McGrath makeup,
she is incredible,
everything.
Right? But they always also have the best people doing everything, the best makeup, best hair. This is the same show. And again, this is Galliano for Dior. This is one of his early shows. And this is her backstage. And the water's not opening.
Should I try and open it?
Oh, got it.
Got it? Okay.
Excuse me.
When is the Dior book coming out? Do you have any idea? Is that going to be later in 2009 or 2010? Later this year?
Hopefully 2009, for Christmas, I hope.
Because I know all the years that I've been going through your pictures with you, trying to get things for different books of mine, I'm always gravitating towards the Dior images because they're so strong, and you're clearly really in love with them. I mean, this is also obviously from when Dior did that China-inspired collection.
Right. And it's Linda Evangelista again. But no matter who does Dior, most of the times you can't even recognize who they are. They're so fantastic. Vanessa thought that Shalom was Audrey. Audrey was who?
Erin.
Oh, Audrey was Erin O'Connor. That's the big difference. And they couldn't be more unalike, more different.
Once they're transformed by John and Pat, then they're a total fantasy creature.
Exactly. And the girls love doing their shows. I mean, you can see why. They look so amazing. And I love this. This is almost a cartoon. She's a bit bigger than John, and she's in front, so the extreme is so much fun.
Oh, I loved this images you took from this collection. It's so fabulous.
Yeah. And this is part of the Dior book, of course.
Now, wasn't that was the Dior collection where it was something like Freud and Jung were talking to each other about the fetishism of clothes,
Right.
and this was the kind of fantasy clothes that he came up with. Such a great collection.
It's so amazing. And the preparation takes hours and hours. The girls are there 3, 4, 5 hours before, just getting ready.
Now, when you started out first with Annie Flanders, and then talk to us about, then you started taking these pictures and they appeared in Vogue and in the European magazines. How did that all happen?
The pictures with Annie Flanders ended up being the cover of the Soho News, the poster of the Soho News in a double page, and everybody really reacted to it so well it doubled the circulation of the paper. So she said, anytime you want to do this, it would be great, just come and do it for us. And since I was both the photographer and also the editor, a lot of the magazines and the newspapers said, maybe we should use her because we're saving a lot of money that way. And so they used me. And I would go to Europe for different shows, and then the Europeans began seeing me, and the grass is always greener. So Anna Piaggi would use me for Vanity, and Franca Sozzani would use me for Italian Vogue. In fact, the first job I had for Italian Vogue was to do the European collections, and I got about 45 pages, and I said to her, only 45? And they didn't know what to do with me because they thought, wow, this is so great, she's going to really love this. And I thought, but there was so many great pictures, and there were so many shows that it should have been like 145, but it was just 45.
You've done covers too, right, for Italian Vogue and for Spanish Vogue.
Vogue.
Right, and Vogue.
Vogue. Yeah. This is more of Galliano for Dior. He does a lot of dancing themes. And this is just the girl with makeup having a cigarette, but if you look at the nails are so done. The eyebrows are in another place. The eyelashes are on the bottom. I mean, it's just amazing.
Now, you told me that actually the Gulf War even had an impact on your becoming more and more popular covering fashion.
It did, because what happened was I was doing fashion mainly for the magazines backstage, and I was alone. And then when the Gulf War happened, Anna Wintour and Alexander Lieberman called me into their office and said, would you go to Europe to do the collections? And I said, of course. And I went because they couldn't send an Irving Penn or Peter Lindbergh or Patrick de Marchelier, because at that time they wouldn't go because there was this war and it was dangerous to be in Paris, they thought. And so I went, and I looked behind me, and there were 5 guys standing there behind me. And I found out a bit later on that their magazines had said to them, go to Paris, go to every show that Roxanne goes, stand behind her, take every picture she takes. And they did. But that was the first of the backstage and the people realizing how wonderful it was, and at most of the times how easy it is to get backstage. That was then. It is not so easy now. And so more and more people came backstage, and then the videos were there, and then there was 1 video, and then 2, and now 1,000. And it never got any easier, but it was always fun and always interesting to be backstage. And there's always enough room for everybody, I feel, because everybody has a different eye, and so all of us could take the picture of the same girl in the same outfit, but the picture will be different. So I never minded everybody there. Now it's kind of crazy because now they don't want photographers there, so they are thinning it out. So, and they kind of have new rules where they have places where you have to stand behind and take pictures. So it limits what can be done. But backstage has always been a joy for me, and I loved being there. This is, again, Dior, John Galliano. And if you just look at all of them, they're so amazing. And everything about them, the shoes, the hair, the clothes, the hats, incredible. This is couture.
It's like the runway show itself is exciting and glamorous, but the backstage images seem to be the real secret glamour world of fashion.
Definitely. Also because you can relate to them, and they can relate to you then, so it makes it more of a package, more intimate, more fun. This is Alec Weck, and she was fixing her dress backstage. Amazing, the whole thing, the makeup, the dress, Alec. And this is the first show that Galliano did for Dior, and they did it at the Opera, the Grand Opera in Paris. And they had done it up in such an incredible way where they did tables everywhere for tea and crumpets. And then they had the girls going up and down the stairs and walking between the tea and the crumpets and the tables. And they did at least 2 shows that time. And it was such a magnificent production that I didn't know if I wanted to be backstage or front stage or with them, without them. It was just incredible. So I did the 2 shows running up and down the stairs in the back and running around to the front to get, and this was the finale where all the flowers came down and the petals and the butterflies and so on. It's really amazing. Now we have one of the first pictures I ever took, and again it was for the Soho News, and it was Halston backstage. And this is one of the pictures that to me really captures the soul of Halston. And if you knew who Halston was and what he did, you'd know this was Halston. He just had that attitude when he held his cigarette, and he was backstage with his sunglasses, and I really like this picture. And I love that he had a star on his sunglasses. These are non-retouched. This is how it really was. And Stephen Sprouse, who has a show now at the Deutsch Gallery. And he was very shy, and he always wrote everything on his hands. He was really talented. He always wrote with a black magic marker. He must have had a trick of getting it off, because he was always writing on them, but then they were always clean to write on again. And Andy Warhol. He went out all the time, and I went out all the time as well. And the interesting thing was, when I was going out at the time of Studio 54 and the Palace and Xenon and the clubs, I never knew I was capturing a generation. I never knew that I was capturing what was happening, because for me they were just people I admired and friends. I didn't realize that they were going to be legends and icons.
In a way, you've really sort of crossed into all kinds of different worlds.
Yes.
I mean, the Warhol world, the Salvador Dali, Halston, and later all of these actors and things. How do you feel about that, of sort of wandering like a little black-clad ninja with your camera through all these different worlds?
For me, the great thing about being able to have a camera is it takes me through all these different worlds. I was invited to dinner with Salvatore Dali for New Year's Eve, and I actually left this party. I was wondering whatever was I thinking to make me leave this party early. But I went to take some pictures of Brenda Bergman, who I liked at the time and who was performing. At any rate, Salvatore Dali loved the camera, obviously. And another one who you couldn't get a bad picture of. He was always so aware of where the camera was and loved it so much. He just wanted to have his picture taken. This is the cover of my first book, Moments. And it's magical to be able to walk through all these worlds. And I think having a camera allowed that. Had I been a textile designer, then I would have been a textile designer. But changing, it was just the best thing I ever did. Salvatore Dali was potassa. He liked drag queens and crazy people. And this is Martine Loutron. This is the Palace, which was a really great club. It was like Studio 54 was in New York. That Palace was in Paris. And Le Palace had all these wonderful parties. And this girl is Martine Loutron. And she's with her husband and a friend. And she thought she had beautiful breasts, so all her clothes were designed to show her breasts. And this is her just sitting around having dinner and a smoke. The social ladies, this is in the evening, they actually all had lunch together. I was there at the lunch, and yet at the evening they were so gossipy. And this to me is the epitome of the social ladies, kind of thin X-ray picture. It just sort of says it all. It says with Nan Kempner how interested she was, how gossipy she was, how friendly she was, and Jacqueline de Riebes, how amazing her profile was. I just also think that this picture says it all for me about social ladies. And I'm doing a photographer and an artist series, and this is one of the pictures I decided to put in there. And it's a piece of Dick Corkery over here. And it's Elizabeth Taylor, and all the paparazzis are trying to get a picture of her. And so many times because I came from a different part, didn't have the credentials of paparazzi or a Daily News photographer or a New York Times photographer, because maybe I was shooting for a more avant-garde newspaper or magazine. So they had the entree and I didn't. So I used to figure out how to do things differently. So if they went in the front, I went in the back. If they went on this side, I went in that side. And so many times I figured out how to get the pictures, even though I wasn't originally expected to be there or allowed to be there. And so it's always been an adventure to try and figure out how to do this and make it look, and get a great picture, and not just get any old picture.
Well, in a way, it shows that although you're not aggressive like most paparazzi, you're very determined.
Oh,
I mean, go in the
absolutely.
back door, go in the window, go in any way to get into the place you need to be.
Yeah. Well, because I see myself being there and I see myself getting pictures. And this is Roy Lichtenstein and Barbara Aschenberg. And I was afraid to actually do that picture because I really liked Roy. And I thought, he just looked so strange, but it was so funny and so bizarre. And years later, we were at, I think it was Philip Taft's house, and Roy came toward me, and I was standing there. I had just come in, and there was nobody else around, and he said to me, "You know, I love that picture you took of me." And I was like, and there was nobody there to hear it. It's kind of like if the tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it fall? Halston and Warhol, they were great friends. Divine. Divine was divine. And this is how it used to be backstage, all the smoking and the drinking.
Oh, that's the one. I chose that one from the cover of one of my books. I remember going through hundreds of your images. So fabulous. Why do you think it is that Kate you can't take a bad picture of her?
I think she's so comfortable within herself and in front of the camera, and she loves the camera so much, but she's so casual because she's so blasé in a way about it that the pictures are really great. Elton John at studio. This is Liza Minnelli, who I just saw on television yesterday in the morning while I was in the gym. and she looks great. She still looks great. She's amazing. It's with Audrey Hepburn at the Met. There's 3 supermodels, Linda, Christy, and Naomi. And this was after a Versace couture show in Paris at the Ritz. And I don't know how I got the girls in the tub. It was magic. I got the girls in the tub, and Sylvester Stallone was there. And he was threatening to turn on the water and do this and do that. So finally the champagne glasses got knocked over, and there was champagne on the dresses and this big scandal, but it was fun to take the pictures while they lasted. There's actually a picture of Linda that I have fighting with Sylvester Stallone, Sly. And this is the same night. It was a good night for pictures. And this was earlier in the evening downstairs at the Ritz, Hotel Ritz. The Versace showed couture at the Hotel Ritz. It was really lovely. This looks just like Naomi Campbell, but it's really Iman. And
we used this one on the first cover of the first issue of my magazine, Fashion Theory,
right,
back in '97. Such a great image.
Hear no evil, see no evil. Oh, speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. And that's a likely story of those girls. And I like this picture so much. I did a lot of series of, when there are 3 people, I go, do see no evil, speak no evil. So I have this large collection of all sorts of people doing that. Giselle backstage. She's amazing as a model as well. She could be running past you and you would say, I need a picture, and she'd turn and give you the picture and keep running. She's incredible. Madonna and Sean Penn at a surprise meeting. And Donatella and Mickey Rourke. What I do also is I like to take color and black and white at the same time, and this is pre-digital. And so I would carry 2 cameras, always one black and white and one color. And at one point, Andy Warhol said to me, I learned something from you. And I went, what? After I got through being shocked. And he said, black and white, color. And he was amazing. He picked up everything from everyone. He was just amazing. He just was incredible.
So how was the transition to digital for you?
It's interesting. I still think digital doesn't quite have the soul of film, but it's getting closer, and it has other qualities. It's quick, it's there, and
you don't need to worry about your slide getting lost and not returned by Vogue or something.
That's true. That's very true. This is Johnny Depp and Kate Moss at a party when they were going out.
You've done lots of images of film stars, too.
Yeah. Well, I love walking through different worlds, and so I like the music world, and I like the film world, and I like models and actors, and so directors and literary world. And so when I get the chance, I try to walk through those worlds. And Billy sitting here, we once did a political thing together. We went to when Clinton was having his inauguration, we went to the party for it. And when we got there, we found out that there were no cameras allowed. And that's what I was there for. And so just at the spur of the moment, when we got to the point where there were all these kind of X-ray machines and so on that you had to get to, I said, quick, we're late, hurry up. And I threw my things on the belt going through there with the X-ray machine. And I pushed Billy and I said, hurry up, they're going to be furious we're so late, hurry up. And they let us through. And I had my camera and the film and the batteries, and I was the only one there who had it. So that was fun. But sometimes when you picture yourself being in, then you're there. And I'm lucky enough to picture myself being there. This is a picture of Barbara and Terry Richardson. And it's the only picture that Bob Richardson had in his home, in the bathroom, but at least in his home.
What kind of relationship do photographers have with other photographers?
Well, I found generally photographers don't work with other photographers, so they don't know them. And so it's difficult in that way to get photographers to be in pictures with other photographers. And my favorite one that I have that's coming, I hope coming up at some point, is a picture that I have of Irving Penn with Richard Avedon and Helmut Newton. And this was taken at an Alexander Lieberman opening. That's John Galliano, by the way. That's not Irving Penn or the other photographers. And it was at this opening that I saw one of them come in. And then after I saw Helmut Newton come in, from the other eye I saw Richard Avedon come in. And then my heart stopped when I saw Irving Penn come in, because most people don't even know what Irving looks like. And Alexander Lieberman was really clever and smart and got in the picture with them so they would allow me to do a picture. And then he got out of the picture, so I had a picture without Alexander Lieberman and the picture without. And I think it's the only moment that those three photographers are in one picture together. It was quite amazing. And then afterwards, Penn was furious with me. He yelled at me. Marc Jacobs. Halston backstage. Oops, let's go back. This is Yves Saint Laurent, and I was the Yves Saint Laurent photographer for 25 years at the Met. And I was really flattered that they chose me, because they could have had anybody in the world, would have been more than happy to do this. And so I spent a week with Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Berger. And he was going back to the airport, and I wanted to have a very New York picture of him. And I went into Barnes & Noble and happened to see that there was a book that you could make this the Empire State Building out of. It was the time of King Kong, this little King Kong man on there, monkey on the top. And when I saw it, I asked the salesman, could I borrow this? Could I please borrow it? I'm going to see Yves Saint Laurent, and I'd like to take a picture with him with it. And the man opened his jacket, and it was Yves Saint Laurent. So he let me have it, and I borrowed it, and I took it, and even thought I was crazy. So he held it and kissed it, and got the picture.
And then the first time you were in Paris to shoot, you went up on the Eiffel Tower with Yves Saint Laurent.
Right.
So
I ended up with Andy Warhol.
Even architecture and you
Right.
go way back.
That's why I keep saying Eiffel Tower instead of Empire State Building. This is Sophie Dahl, and again, it's John Galliano for Dior.
What was Yves Saint Laurent like?
He was a very interesting man because he had an aura around him that people wouldn't break the aura. So nobody sort of pierced around, and nobody would go directly to him except for maybe Pierre Berger, Lulu, and me. Because I was always on first name basis with the designers because I was backstage. And I guess they liked what I did, or felt somehow I was really loving what they did and respected what they did. And so I could just go over and say, hello, Eve, and give him a kiss, hello, and talk to him on first name basis, which was really lovely. But everybody else treated him truly like a legend, and also like they were a bit afraid of him. And it was quite interesting, the reaction that people had to him. But what I wanted to say about Yves is, everybody said he was out of it, but to me he really wasn't out of it, because when I was backstage talking to him about 5 or 10 years ago, I had mentioned that I had just seen the picture of Pat Cleveland, and he said, oh, I remember, that's when we first met. Okay, that's pretty good. And then he said, Pat Cleveland had ivy around her hair. She was the bride. And we ended up at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And I thought, I just saw the picture and looked at the date, so I knew about it. He did this from memory. What an incredible memory the man has. He was also backstage. It was so interesting because he would fluff the girls and he would check every girl that went out. And no matter what everybody did before the girl got to him, he always made sure the girl was perfect. This is Kate Moss and Christy Turlington, and I needed a laughing picture. And I said, would you laugh for me? Laughing picture, just like that. Amazing. Karl Lagerfeld with Anna Wintour. And Patrick Kelly with Grace Jones, Iman, and Naomi Campbell. This is Joe McDevitt. He was a makeup artist, and this was the Love Bowl, one of the Love Bowls. And I love bathroom pictures. I always think I get great pictures in the bathroom for some reason. Highway and bathroom. I'm never there that much, but when I'm there, the pictures are always good. So this is Joe McDevitt. These are also some of the very early pictures I took of Jerry and the Misfits and Lou Reed.
Young Reed.
Yeah, young, handsome. So that was my music series. We're going through my music series. This is Gautier dancing with Madonna.
How did you take that one? What was the circumstance?
There was a party in Paris, and I heard it was going to be a good one. And I thought, oh, I'll go. And it was at this photographer's loft, and I went, and I did a double take. I couldn't believe it. There was Gautier dancing with Madonna. And this one has a funny story. All my pictures have a story. I was going to Elton John's birthday, and they gave me the wrong time. And I got there, and Pamela Anderson had already brought down the cake. And this was at David LaChapelle's house in California. And the next night was going to be the night of the Oscars. And I knew David was taking Pamela. So since I missed all the festivities the night before, and I arrived and everybody was drunk and they were a mess and I just couldn't do pictures, I said, can I come and we'll do a prom picture? You know, like when you go to the prom and you're all dressed up and you're in the car and I'll take a picture. And I do that really quick, so I'll just come by and do a real quick picture. And David is a big fan of mine, as I am of his. And he said, yeah, just come right over. And so I came over, and David was doing pictures for advertisement for the brand of clothing it was. I can't remember the brand name. And Pamela had come, and this was what she was actually wearing during the last of the advertising. And David said, you know, we don't have any time. And Pamela said, I'm not even going to change. And David says, I'm going to bring my wine to the car. And I said, I'll take pictures, I'm really quick. And they said, oh, there's no time. And I said, it takes me 3.5 minutes to take a roll of film. And they said, okay. And I said to Pamela, Pamela, your panties are showing. And she looked at me like, yeah. So I said, okay. So I did the pictures, and I went to the Oscars. And I didn't have the right credentials for the Oscars, so I couldn't get into the Oscars. And I was so frustrated. I had done other pictures, it turned out, but I was so frustrated because of this Oscar thing that I filed these pictures and didn't look at them until I needed a cover for my book. And I remembered the pictures, and I went back and looked at them, and I said, whoopee, cover.
Is this on the cover of Moments or People?
And this is on the cover of People. And I usually don't ask people if I could use their pictures because their panties aren't showing. But for Pamela, I said, could I use your picture? And she said, yeah, I'd love it. And just recently, I was down at Art Basel, Miami, because I had some pictures down there. And David and Pamela were there. And David said, this is Roxanne. She's the one who did the pictures. She said, I know. And she jumped on me and she gave me a lap dance. and I was the envy of every man and woman in the place. I was so embarrassed. Yeah. Robert Mapplethorpe was sick at the time of this picture. I knew he had AIDS, and I really wanted to take his picture, and I had asked, could I come to his studio? And he said, of course, you can come. And I went, and I went with my assistant, Landy, and I looked in the bag, and I didn't have film. The film was at my studio. And I was at Robert's studio to do the picture. And so I called for the film, but the film never came. And I called them, and I said, where's the film? And they said, we sent it to your studio. And I said, I'm not at my studio, I'm at Mapplethorpe's studio. And they said, okay. And then they sent the film, and they sent it to my studio. And finally, Mapplethorpe said, I'm too tired, I don't want to do a picture. And so I don't know what possessed me, but the film had just come, and it was in the camera. And I said to my assistant, Landy, go take off your clothes and stand behind Robert for one picture. So Robert said, okay. And he did the picture. Another bathroom picture. This is Art and Area, and it's Chuck Close, the artist, standing in front of a Marcel Duchamp urinal with the photograph that he took above him. And I really like this picture of Chuck. I think it says it all. Oh, it's my artist series, I see. This is Jean-Michel Basquiat. And when I took this picture, he said, don't show it to anybody. And I said, why? And he said, I'm smoking. I don't want my clients to know I smoke. And then I didn't show it to anybody, and he had passed away of an overdose. And I figured, fair game, and brought the picture back out. Keith Haring. Andy. This is one of the pictures that inspired Kota Azawa, and Kota did this picture in a book because he did iconic images, and he calls it remix, and he takes the images and then he makes it his own. And I have, I wonder if the other picture's in there. Oh, this is Richard Avedon walking in front of a Richard Avedon photograph. But, and this is the Irving Penn, Richard Avedon, and Helmut Newton. So Penn is, of course, in the middle. And I even moved them back a bit, so Penn would be in the middle of the black and the white, and Richard would be in the white, and Helmut Newton would be on the other side. And Penn was really furious with me, and he wrote me a scathing letter afterwards saying, "Dear photo rapist." And it went on and on and on. And at the very end, he said, "I don't know what you do, but you do a great job at it." Then I lost the letter, and then I found the letter. This I really liked. This was a Damien Hirst opening with David Bowie and Julian Schnabel all having a cigarette. And now this is some of the editorial work that I've done.
You've done a lot of editorial in Europe, particularly. Mm-hmm. What are some of the magazines you've worked with there?
I've done German Vogue, German Amica, I've done Italian Vogue, and Uomo Vogue, and French Vogue, and Spanish Vogue, and I work a lot in Europe. I'm world famous in Europe. Because, again, the grass always seems to be greener, so they like Americans to come over there and work, and we like the Europeans to come here and work. And this was my holiday card for the new year. And I did the Bafta Awards, which was really fun. This is Keira Knightley. And they gave me a little room, which was a broom closet. We had to divide it between two photographers. And we had one camera, one computer, and a very excited editor named Joe, who just went and got all the stars and said, you have to do a picture with Roxanne, you have to do a picture. And so I had 5 clicks at most to do the pictures because they were all lining up. And so we did a whole series of kind of gray background pictures. And this is Neo. I never get his name right. And we're up in Harlem with Neo. Oh, I just clicked that one. Let me see if I can click back. Come on, go back. Okay. This is in the laundromat in Paris, near my hotel. And the young guys, it was for a new magazine in, where was it, Vanessa, do you remember? Holland, Amsterdam, right, exactly. And they had tuxedos and they just looked so ordinary on the guys that I thought we should have fun with it and go crazy. And so we went to the laundromat, and there are actually people standing behind me doing their laundry. And they all thought we were crazy, but it was really fun to do the shoot. And then we have him. He was a great model. He would do anything. So he was sitting there like that. And I said, could I have a picture? And he said, sure. And so there's his picture of a typical night in Paris. Fun. Claudia Schiffer. The first time I did this with Heidi Klum. I went to the Berlinale, which is the Berlin Film Festival. And what we did was we threw people in a situation. The first time we did it with Heidi, the second time this is Claudia doing it. And we did everything that was fun to do with her over a great many days, and we had a fun time with it. We would take her to a movie and then have her eat popcorn, or maybe there's another one. This was one of her on the red carpet, and then we did her putting on makeup, taking off makeup, and each time we did a picture of her, we changed her outfit. So it was really a fun thing to do, and we did pictures with all the stars that we could. So it was great. And Maria Callas at the Venice Film Festival. And we basically did the same thing with Maria Callas at the Venice Film Festival. And we did tons of pictures with her dressed in all sorts of outfits at different days. And we'll go back to Maria Callas because it's a big, can we get it that? Yeah. And what we did was we shot this for Italian Vanity Fair. Before there was an Italian Vanity Fair, it was to be for the first issue. And so nobody in Venice knew who we were, so we didn't have entree into anything. So we would just go everywhere on our own, and we would just take all the pictures we can in all the different situations. And it turned out to be such a great story that they decided to run the pictures in Venice the next year to advertise the Venice Film Festival. And because the pictures were so much fun and so great, and those of the stars, they ended up doing a photo award, and they do the Venice Film Award, which I'm the judge of every year now, because it was the inspiration for them that everybody really could take great pictures at the Venice Film Festival. And now, Iman, and she's wearing the world's largest diamond. And we were at an Amphar party in Cannes. And I said to Iman, go up there where the photographers are, and when you hear me scream your name, turn around and I'll have this really great picture. So she went, okay. And I'm standing behind her now, and I'm screaming, Iman, Iman, and I have this really little voice, and I had no mic. And all the photographers in the back are screaming, and they're much louder than I am. So I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, this isn't working. I'm going to go back there. You turn around whenever you want and pose, and I'll get the picture. So she turned around and I got the picture. This is advertising now. Oh, they used the Iman Jibirs used it as advertisement. This is a Coke advertisement. This was for the Diamond catalog that we did for, I think it was also De Beers. And this is just recently this summer, Dim. The dog was supposed to be this really great trained dog. The first thing it did, it arrived, it was green. This is all retouching. It was not only green, it was snarling, and it bit the model. And I don't know how we got good pictures, because it was the nastiest, most horrible dog. And the weather kept changing, and the poor girl, it was really cold, and then it was hot, and then it was raining, and then the skies were changing. It was really a crazy shoot. Moet Chandon, we love Moet Chandon. This also was inspiration for another artist, not this picture, but you'll see it. This was a crazy shoot. We had a lot of fun with it. Okay, this is one of the Moet Chandon ads, and there's this artist, we saw it in the Phillips catalog, called the Decapitator, and he decapitates people. He does it with advertisements. So we happened to find it in, this is the Decapitator. You see the red guy coming in, and then you see him decapitating. And then the last one is the decapitated person. Isn't that disgusting?
So now you've inspired a whole genre of
right.
bizarro appropriationist artists.
Exactly. And this is Koto Osawa, so it came from the last Andy Warhol picture that you actually saw the picture. But they live on.
So now you're not only the famous photographer who invented backstage photography, but you're yourself a source of inspiration to all these artists.
Exactly. And so when I said to Simon Dupree, I said, look what's happening. He said, well, all the hottest artists are taking your work and using it. How great. You should be honored.
It's pretty fabulous. Thank you so much. We're so honored you came. Thank you, Roxanne.
My pleasure.
We have time for one or two questions, if there are any. It's hard to see you, so you might have to sort of jump up and announce your question. Are there any questions? Yes, back there.
I'm just interested because you're saying that you, one thing is wear black to go to the book today, but I've seen the camera that you use for your daytime photography and the camera that you use for your nighttime photography. Is that the same one?
Yes.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind me asking what type of camera it is?
I have a Canon 5D.
And with those little Chinese jackets of yours, you used to carry around the film inside the big pocket, so.
Right, exactly. And batteries. And the little cameras. There goes my low voice.
Was another question? John.
You showed us a number of worlds of fashion, society, cinema. One world that I thought I might see and didn't see is the world of athletics. I wondered if you've ever done any work with that.
Not very much. I mean, if I took their picture, I took their picture while they were out, not while they were doing their athletic things.
There's so many of the famous pictures. I mean, you have so many thousands of iconic images. You didn't even have time to show like the one of Mrs. Freeland. But that one was such an amazing image of Mrs. Freeland just there. And it had such an impact on me when I saw it, a blow-up of it at your apartment. I actually dreamed about it.
Oh, great. Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
Is there any photographer that has inspired you in your career and the way you take photographs?
And the way I take photographs? I actually, when I first became a photographer, wouldn't look at anybody's photographs at all because I really wanted it to be something that came out of me and nothing that was copied. And so I would go to museums and see artwork like Picasso, Matisse, and so on. That was all fair game. But I didn't collect or have photographic books around. I didn't go to photographic shows. And in fact, about when I finally did go, about 15 years later or so into the career, 10 or 15 years, when I really knew that I had my own look, because people would say, I saw your pictures, they look great, and I'd say, they left my name off, how'd you know it was my pictures? And they said, it looked like you. So I said, okay, then that's what I look like. I can now do anything and look at all the other photographers. And I went to a Ouija show, and I looked at his work, not his dead people work, but the other things, like the girls with the money in the stocking at the Bowery, and the kind of ladies of the night. And I thought, I did things like that, and then the torn stockings, and I did things like that. And I thought, well, there was a real kindred soul there that I related to, because I said, I have a picture just like that, only it's different. It was my version of that picture, but I'd never seen that picture. It's really an odd kind of thing.
One more question? There's one up there.
I'm just curious, how much do you do, your shots all seem very sort of spontaneous, they don't seem like sort of stage type images. How much do you do editing in the camera, or how much do you do with Photoshop? Or do editing, how much do you use even Photoshop or those types of editing software?
That's a good question. When I'm doing my advertising, then I make it happen. When I'm taking pictures, then I'm seeing it that way. And sometimes it was really only one click or two clicks that got the picture, and it wasn't a series, and I didn't have the time. Like with Pamela and David, I actually did a few rolls of film, 2 or 3 rolls of film, to get the picture that I like best. But generally, it's I see it, it's there, and I want to capture it. And then many times it is just that 1 or 2 clicks, and that's the picture.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Valerie.